will show up soon. Almost. Oh, Rex, I forgot to ask. Is it Ogle or
Ogle.
Ogle? Ogle.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't
awesome.
take offense though.
Okay. Hmm. Okay, there they are. Garrett. Hi, Garrett. I know Garrett. Jennifer, Lisa, Rebecca. Hi, everyone. Barbara. Please let us know where you're tuning in from. We must have, I know Garrett is nearby. Um, please let us know where you're tuning in from or what brought you here today. If you don't want to, if you want to keep your whereabouts private. And I'll just go ahead and get started so we can dive right in. Hi, if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Omar Savelo, and I'm the Literary Program Coordinator here at the Mark Twain Housing Museum. And thanks so much for joining us for this virtual event for When We Ride. Now, I need to start off by saying that virtual programs like this are produced in part with support honoring the late Frank Lord. We are grateful to honor his memory with these programs. And I also want to give thanks to our member. I think we have one member tonight, but I know that a few of you also want to become members. It's a great way to support the museum by becoming a member. These are the times to support your museums. So there are actually a lot of great benefits to becoming a member. You'll receive free or discounted admission to our author programs, the House and Museum, gear round discounts in the store and cafe, and much more. You don't need to be in Connecticut to take advantage of those. So we have an online store, and we have these virtual programs. So becoming a member really, really pays off rather quickly. And we also have reciprocal member. We're part of a reciprocal museum program. So if you become a member of our museum, it pays off at other places too. Um, so let me turn now on to our guests. Rex Ogle is the author. Ogle, did I say that wrong?
It's all good. I got called Rex Ugly when I was little, so
Yeah.
Oh,
the O is a U. I
oh.
don't know.
So he's the author of Free Lunch, winner of the YALSA Excellence in Nonfiction for Young Adults Award, Punching Bag, a New York Public Library Best Book. Don't Forget Me, finalist for the YALSA Excellence in, is that pronounced Yalsa or is it just
Yeah,
YA
I think
Yalsa?
you can say either.
Yeah.
Stands for something
Ex
very long.
yeah, Nonfiction for Young Adults Award and Road Home, which received a Prince Honor and a Stonewall Book Award honor. Our moderator tonight is Rasheed Newson, who is the author of My Government Means to Kill Me, which we did a program for. I think it was a couple of years ago now, was it, Rasheed?
Yes. First came out.
Yeah, he's a Georgetown graduate and he's also a TV writer and executive producer. He's worked on Bel Air, The Chi, and Narcos. During this event, we encourage you to have a conversation with each other in the chat. If you have a specific question, though, please post that directly into our Q&A section, and we'll get to it later on in the event. So that's all from me for now. I'm feeling a little tired, so that's why I'm like kind of all over the place. But I will turn this over to Rex and Rashid, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. I'll see you all soon.
Thank you, Omar.
Yeah, thanks.
Rex, this is a beautiful book.
Oh, thank you. It is pretty, right? I can take no responsibility for the cover.
It
Um,
is beautiful inside and out. What I'm excited about this book is I think you do a few things that we don't see enough of in literature. First, just for the uninitiated, how do you describe this book, or what do you think of this book? How do you
oh,
think about it?
it's funny because when I describe it, I almost describe it like there's two main characters, even though there's centrally one main character. But I say it's about two boys who grew up together in poverty. One is struggling very hard to make good grades, go to college, make something of his life. And then the other one is struggling to pay bills, which he happens to be doing through selling drugs.
And would you and you've written this, it's a novel, but it's also a novel told in poetry.
It is. We say novel in verse so that young boys will read it.
Because you say poetry, they won't do it.
You cannot say poetry. Poetry is for girls.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, for as many people I know, poetry can be a little intimidating to some readers, but it actually also makes everything very digestible,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you just sort of, your mind, you're turning pages a lot sooner than if it was
Yes.
prose in these
Yeah.
big blocks. And it's also, I mean, poetry requires sort of like a distillation of emotion and action in a way that's very like powerful.
Yeah.
Why did you tell this book this way or tell this story this way?
Okay, so after I wrote four memoirs, I was like, no more memoirs. And then I came up with this, and by I came up with this, I remembered my senior in high school and was like, oh, this is interesting. I told my publisher, and he's like, I thought you said no more memoirs. And I was like, right, right, right. I did say that. So this one's only like 70% true. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely more dramatic. It's, I get to, since it's fiction, I got to play with a lot of stuff. I changed a lot of details. I amped up other stuff. But so it is based on someone who is very dear to me, who's my best friend, my senior in high school. And he was obsessed with Tupac. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a rap musician. Um, and I mean, I loved Hole, Courtney Love, Nirvana, Lemonheads, Elastica. Like, I was very much into like indie rock at the time, and he loved Tupac, and he was always playing Tupac. And I was like, I hate this noise. And he's like, you're a reader, right? You like stories, right? And I was like, yeah, of course. And he was like, I'm gonna get you something. So what he did was he bought one of Tupac's CDs, and then he kept the CD, but he gave me the CD with the fold out.
The liner notes.
Yes, that with all the lyrics. And he's like, read this for me. I went home, I read it that night, and I was like, oh, he's like a poet. Like he's,
Oh yeah, I mean that's Tupac I love because I knew growing up he'd gone to a school for the arts.
I didn't know that.
I mean he was at school with Jada Pinkett Smith before she was Smith. And
Okay.
I mean they wrote poetry and plays and like all of that. I mean Tupac was well versed in the arts.
Well, mind you, this was pre-internet, so I couldn't look this stuff up.
No, I was done about it. I was learning it in Vibe magazine. I
Yeah,
was
well, I was not reading Vibe magazine in rural Texas in the 90s, so
Well, by the way, that's something else. I mean, as someone who writes historical fiction, I
yeah.
have bad news for you. This is also historical fiction.
How so?
Anything more than 30 years ago is historical fiction. Welcome.
I'm old. Um,
Welcome, my friend. Would you mind reading some of the first,
no,
few
not at
pages?
all. But just to answer your question, I
Yeah.
did write it in verse for my friend because I dedicated the book to him. And it just, when I came up with the story idea, I was like, it has to be in verse if it's going to be about this. So, yeah, I'll read the first few pages. I'm waiting to die the second they kick in the door, the drug dealer and his crew, because I know it's going to be bad, because their guns are already out. I'm shoved up against the wall, punched in the stomach so hard I can't breathe. A tattooed forearm crushes my throat, choking me. Then the gun pinches my temple, metal pressing into skin as I stare cross-eyed at the finger on the trigger, waiting for my brains to smear the wall like red paint. That's when Lawson Steeler starts screaming, where's my money? You know how they say when you're about to die, your life flashes before your eyes? Yeah, that's what I'm about to do. And then I'm going to read one more just because, oh my God, the kids go crazy for this one. I learned this recently at a school visit. I swear I sold like 50 books just because I read this page.
I love this. It's the money page.
Yeah. Weed, pot, bud, Mary Jane, ganja, herb, grass, chronic, dope, hash, trees, hemp, cannabis, marijuana. Folks like to smoke them bongs, blunts, doobies, fatties, spliffs, wood pipes, metal pipes, ceramic pipes, glass pipes, even out of apples, and of course, joints all the way down to the tail end they call a roach. I'm not judging. I don't smoke though. That shit makes you stupid. And I can't afford to be stupid. I'm dumb enough as it is. But my best friend Lawson, he smokes. He sells too.
I want to get to like we'll talk about the war on drugs under which we were raised. But
Yeah.
before that, one of the things you do in this book that I don't think we see enough of is you have Benny, who's this kid who's academically minded. You have Lawson, who in the beginning of the book is selling weed. And this is a story about friendship between two teenage boys. And
Yeah.
I was like, you normally see that cast as a rivalry, either in sports or in romance. They're fighting for the hand of somebody. But like, this is a story about brotherhood and two young men who aren't afraid to show each other affection and speak about the bond they have to each other. Was that your experience growing up? And why is that something you wanted to explore?
I mean, I didn't have great parents, to say the least. If anyone's read my memoirs, they know why. But I had great friends. I was so lucky when it came to friends. I always had a ride or die by my side, and it was almost like the universe, when one would go out the door, another one would take their place. Um, and when I moved my senior year of high school, I moved in with my abuela in Abilene, Texas, and it was more of a sketchy neighborhood than I was actually. I went from a very sketchy neighborhood in a rich area to a very sketchy neighbor in a poor area, and the sketch is very different. I can say that.
Mhm.
Um, and when I moved to Abilene, it was grittier, it was heavier, it was a little darker. Um, and I immediately met Marshall, and we were like instant best friends. And yeah, the rest is poetry.
But what is it? I mean, like, why do you? I mean, like, we don't like people seem to shy away from what I'll call like guy on guy friendship. Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard to. You don't see a lot of stories built on this, and so I was really touched by that because I was like, I remember what some of those friendships mean to me.
Yeah.
Um, I also think it's an interesting friendship because Lawson, for lack of a better word, seems to be cooler socially, and he's
100%.
giving Benny the cover to be himself,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I had so many insecurities growing up, but somehow I always ended up friends with, in my opinion, very cool people. And I was always like, why are they hanging out with me? Like, what am I doing for them that justifies them being friends with me? Yes, for one, I was a secret boyfriend. For another, I did their homework. Another one, like they could tell me anything, and I was a vault. I never shared their secrets. So each friendship like had its different thing, but I mean, I had so many great stories about so many great friends. And the thing is I remember learning about Latin, I want to say in 10th grade. And the teacher was like, in Latin, there are 5 different words for love. And we had to memorize them for a quiz. There was family love, there was sexual love, there was romantic love, there was friendship love, and then there was something else. I don't remember the names for any of them, except Eros, I think, was the sexual love. But my point being is that this old 4,000-year-old language had different words for love in English. We only have the one. And so it needs an adjective before it to really say, like, because I tell my friends I love them all the time. And it's not the same as saying I love you to my brother or to my partner or to my dog. Like, I love my dog more than all those people. I would kill for him because he's so cute and furry. But I don't, we don't have a name for like brotherly love in America. And I think people do shy away from it, like saying those 3 words to their friends. Like, I don't think I would have ever said those words to one of my brotherly friends, but I wish I would have.
There's something you said when you were reading the poem, you said, I don't judge. And one of the things I think is interesting at the beginning of this is Benny doesn't judge Lawson, but then he's told by adults that he should.
Mhm.
Um, what do you, I mean, like, I'm interested in that thing of like what happens when judgment enters a friendship. Do you think, I'll stop there
Okay. Um,
because I saw something click.
well, here's the thing is that, for me, I tried not to judge people, and I did. I definitely had judgment. We're as teenagers, we all have judgment. But I do think there is an importance to drawing boundaries in friendships or relationships, especially when you're a teenager, you need to know where to draw the line. It's so easy to get caught up in peer pressure. I was lucky enough to like have had such a volatile relationship with all the men in my life growing up. Like I refuse to say yes sir or no. I refuse to say sir to anybody.
Mhm.
Um, to the point where like my stepdad dislocated my shoulder trying to get me to say it to him. And I was like, rip it out. I will never say it to you. You have not earned my respect. I will not give it to you. And so, like with peer pressure, I had the opposite reaction. If someone's like, "You're being a baby. You need to come smoke this cigarette." I mean, like, if someone pushed me, I'd be like, "Absolutely not!" Like, it just pushed me further away. So I had boundaries, but I saw so many people who were so scared of feeling left out that they did things they didn't want to. And I think that's important for kids to know you can have a boundary and still be friends with someone. Um, and so, yeah, for Benny, he drew a line in the sand and Lawson did not take it well.
I mean, it's interesting. I want to talk about your perspective on adults and how Benny and Lawson see them. I will admit to being a very arrogant kid, but I also think it's what got me out of Indiana.
Yeah.
There were a lot of adults who were always pulling me aside to talk about my attitude, my mouth, that look on my face. And
Yeah.
I, in my head, would shut them down by thinking, if you knew anything, you wouldn't be living in Indiana.
Yeah.
What do let's talking about Benny, like his mother is the first one who says sort of says, don't be like me, step away from Lawson.
Yeah.
What do you He fights that message. What do you think he takes from his mother when she's saying that? What is it he thinks she doesn't understand? And why does he kind of move towards her point of view?
I mean, when we're kids, we're resistant to anyone telling us to do, especially our parents. And I do think there's something in a brotherly bond and a friendship bond and, a relationship bond that even though parents were once your age and they lived through that, they know that they made mistakes and they don't want you to repeat their mistakes. That or they're racist. Um, but yeah, I mean, like my abuela, I loved her and I never say anything bad about her ever, but I will say, like when I moved in with her, she was like, don't hang out with the Mexicans around here. They'll get you in a gang. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, what did you say? But this was a woman who had like six jobs, and like three of the volunteer jobs that she did was she would go into the court systems, she would teach Spanish convicts how to read English, she would translate in Spanish courts for young kids, and she used to go to juvenile detention centers and help these Mexican kids write resumes so they could get jobs when they get out. So I don't think she was saying it from a place of judgment. Well, maybe it was judgment, but she did not want me in the system. And I will say I feel like I don't know how I avoided the system when so many of my friends ended up in it. I remember being terrified of being arrested just growing up, and it's yeah, but I mean I mouthed off to my teachers all the time, especially like I mean, principals would call me in. I got suspended a lot. It's funny because I wish I had touched on that more in like my memoirs, like how often I was in the principal's office, how often I got suspended, how often I got into physical fights. Uh, but that wasn't the premise of those stories. But I feel like what people don't realize is I had so much anger from my home life. Of course, it poured into school. The only adults I ever really respected were English teachers and art teachers. But I mean, so many teachers would come up to me and they'd be like, I don't understand why you hang out with these kids. You're a straight A student. And I'm
Well,
like,
I there are a couple other points I was wondering if
yeah.
you could read because I want to talk about
Oh, yeah.
that in terms of just the attitude that Benny sort of gets approached at school by some adults.
Yeah, I'll read it. Uh, when I'm called out of class to the principal's office, my heart stops beating. I'm 6 years old again, being led down a hall for putting pink gum in Trisha Holden's curly permed hair. I'm 10 years old, being led down a hall for being caught showing my test answers to Adam Garcia. I'm 13 years old being led down a hall for belting Tommy Starks in the face when he called my mom trash. Those times I knew I was in trouble because I knew what I did. This time, this is worse because this time I don't. I'm 17 years old, walking alone down an empty hall. except for the rows of lockers staring at me like a row of accusers in silence, vibrating red with judgment. My mind spins asking what I do. All tough. She sits at her desk in her office, lit dim except a lamp shining on a wood placard, its black nameplate engraved in gold that says Principal Alexandra Villalobos. Hair pulled back tight, red-rimmed glasses reflecting a computer screen while her short, unpainted nails click and clack against the keyboard keys before she finally looks up, face unreadable. I'm concerned, she says. I've noticed you run around with Lawson Pierce. Knots interrupt my stomach, my breath catching in my throat, imagining what my mom is going to say when I tell her everything went sideways. Yeah, I say. He's a bad element at our school. Bad grades, poor attendance, suspended every other month for how he talks to teachers. I say, yeah? Why do you hang with him? I shrug, contemplate, even though I already know. We grew up together. He's my best friend. You should reconsider who you consider a friend, she says. You have a bright future, Diego. I'd hate to see you mess it up. I stare down at the linoleum floor between my shoes. She says, congratulations, you ranked 12th out of the whole senior class. My stomach releases its butterflies, letting them fly away toward the sun and the sky. I'm telling you this, she says, because you have to keep it up the rest of the school year. You have to focus, you have to double down, do whatever you can, work hard, and maybe you can make top 10. But Lawson, she adds, don't let him be a bad influence. The first thing I do is ignore the last thing she said, because all I want to do is tell Lawson the good news. But when I see him, I stop, reconsidering, not wanting to rub it in, that I might actually get out of this town.
I love that. I mean, if I were a teenager, I would see the truth of that because I've was part of those conversations. As a parent, that made me furious. I believe it, but the thing about it is, I don't think she's actually concerned about Benny. I mean, if Benny were older, he'd point out, I've been friends with him for years, and I'm 12th in the class, so clearly he's not bringing me down.
Right.
Whatever fear you have of him tripping me up, it isn't coming to fruition. And why would it suddenly happen in the last semester? I don't need you to tell me to keep it up. I
Yeah.
got here without these little pep talks from you. What she's doing is trying to isolate Lawson. And part of what I think of when I think of like the war on drugs, one of the things they were trying to get us to do as kids was isolate the kids who were part of that world. This idea,
100%.
and it's such a dirty strategy because, by the way, you think he comes to, I mean, he actually comes to school for me. I had friends who were coming to school to be in the social setting with the three or four friends they had. And if
Yeah.
we cut them off, you will never see this kid again. So what is, that strategy drives me crazy. But I
Yeah.
love that you sort of recreated it. What else from sort of the war on drugs and that time period in terms of like adult kid relationships were you trying to tap into or did you want to explore?
Well, I mean, one of the things is like Marshall wanted to skip school all the time. And like you, I would be like, come to school, come to school. And he's like, I'm failing. And I'm like, come to school. I was like, you know that girl you like? Ooh, she looked great today. You need to see what she's wearing tomorrow. Like I was always trying to trick my friends into coming to school, even if they did not want to. The other things I try to tap into the book is I also wanted to show a few things. One really important thing, because when I tell people about this book, everyone assumes Lawson is black. I can't tell you how many times people have been like, Lawson's white? And I was like, yeah, and Marshall was white. And they just assume that because I said drug dealer, he's black.
Mm,
Just crazy. And the funny thing was when I was in school, when I was younger, I spent a lot of time in the sun. I'm very brown if I spend time in the sun. Now I'm a little more cautious because my dad had skin cancer, but I definitely was darker when I was younger. And so when people wanted drugs, they would come to me instead of coming to Marshall. And they'd be like, "Can I get some marijuana?" I'd be like, "You need to go talk to him, not me. I'm not the go-between." And they're like, yeah, but you're. And I'm like, what? And I just assumed it was like my skin color. I was more approachable as a drug dealer because I was brown and he was white, blonde hair and blue eyes. And so that was one of the things that I absolutely wanted to like drive home. Lawson was white. He had blue eyes. He had blonde hair.
Yeah.
And that was one thing. Another thing was who he was in love with in the book was also who he was in love with in real life. In real life, my two best friends were Marshall, the drug dealer, and Casey, the vice president of the student council, straight A student, wonderful girl. They hated each other because obviously they came from different walks of life, but I worked so much at Crystal's Pizza and Spaghetti Warehouse as a busboy that I used to drive them together and be like, look, I only have one night off this week. You have to hang out together. I don't care if you hate each other. And I remember when I made them go to Olive Garden, we all went to Olive Garden, we had dinner. And then Marshall made some stupid bet with her that like Darth Vader was not Luke Skywalker's father. And I was like, everyone knows Darth Vader
Yeah.
was Luke
Famously.
Skywalker's father. And he bet her dinner. And I was like, oh, I see what's going on here.
Yeah.
And they did. They ended up dating. They fell in love. Their daughter is my goddaughter. I got her permission and Casey's permission to tell this story. Uh, it's and that's again like this is the thing is like kids don't assume that drug dealers deserve the love of someone who is striving for greatness in their life. They, like you said, they try to divide the riffraff from the people who have potential, which I think is so insane because
Well, and they try to
there's stuff
make
to
the
be learned on
kids,
both sides.
well, trying to make the kids complicit in it is also the idea that you should think of I really have never liked in all aspects of my life this idea of being sorted out.
Yeah.
Nothing makes me, but you're one of the good ones. And I'm like, you get away from me with that.
Yeah.
It just, I don't buy it for a minute. There's another thing you do in this book that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Lawson takes the money he gets from selling drugs and he gives it to his mom to pay rent, which is I mean, popular culture, especially during the war on drugs, had you believing that everybody sold drugs to buy gold chains and
Mhm.
fancy cars.
Yeah.
And I'm like, actually, I mean, nobody thinks that somebody's keeping the lights on at home, but that probably is what most of it is.
Yeah.
Can you tell me why include that and I mean, how much of that did you see or how did that, why was that a part of this story for you?
I saw it all the time. I mean, here's the thing is, yes, Lawson does buy himself some nice clothes, but I mean, what do you do when you're 17 and you have a shoebox full of cash? But that wasn't the first thing he did. The first thing he did was pay rent. He bought himself food. And you know what? He doesn't want to go to the grocery store and buy groceries. He wants to go out to a nice restaurant. Like these, the kids feel empowered by taking back power by having a job. And yes, they're selling drugs, but they have an income, which their parents do not. And but here's the thing is they're good kids doing bad things for good reasons. I don't think that Lawson failed society. I think that society failed Lawson. If anything, like, if his mom had been taken care of, he wouldn't have needed to do it. The way I look at it is, there were actually some chapters that were cut because it was much longer than I thought, but one of them was like looking back and how he started dealing drugs because he couldn't afford lunch. And my publisher was like, you've done free lunch to death. Let's not.
You're
He's
not
like,
allowed to discuss lunch. They don't even have lunch in your books anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is like, that's it. Everyone's like, pot is a gateway drug. It's so funny because, wait, I probably shouldn't say this.
Oh no, no. We've gone this far.
Like I bought my first dime bag of weed from my stepdad when I was 13, and weed actually helped me calm down because my mind was always going so rapidly and it made me anxious. I was already a depressed person. You know, 25 years later, I've learned I'm bipolar, which my mom was bipolar. Like it's actually not a surprise to me, but my mind was always going. And weed, everyone's like, weed's a gateway drug. And it wasn't for me. Weed was something that I did not often, but I did sometimes to help me come down and have just 3 hours in a week to relax and to just And yes, for other kids, it's a gateway, but I would say like there are gateways for some people. Like if you don't have the money for lunch and you're like, someone asks you, like, well, oh, hey, be the broker between me and this kid, sell them weed. Like if you're going to get 20 bucks to do this transaction, why wouldn't you if it means feeding yourself?
Well, that's the thing. Like we looked at, especially like drug dealers and the war on drugs. It was put as like a moral failing, right? It was a moral failing to use drugs, as opposed to, I don't know, an economic necessity. One of my favorite movies is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And at
Okay.
one point, they are getting chased by the insurance company or the bankers who are tired of them robbing the banks. And Butch says, if they would just pay me to not rob the banks, I wouldn't rob the banks. I wouldn't rob the train.
Yeah.
If these kids had money, they wouldn't be selling drugs. Like
Yeah.
it's actually not hard to figure out. Like the kid needed money for lunch. If
Yeah.
there had been a free lunch program, maybe he would have done other things with his time.
Yeah.
You know, it
I
just
mean,
it just sort of knocks me out. I really am Team Lawson as I read this story because I was
and-
mad on his behalf that
yeah.
there were all these adults who were talking about him but not helping him, and all they could think was how to isolate him.
Yeah.
One thing you do also is this is about that last year in high school when the great sorting is happening. We're applying for colleges, those of us who are applying. You kind of know this is your last year with some of these people.
Mm.
There's an inevitability to the goodbyes, and there's a pressure to succeed. It's now or never time, so they tell us. Can you, again, like in sort of in recreating that, what do you remember from that, and what is it you wanted to convey from from Benny's perspective and from Lawson's? Because I felt sorry for Lawson because he's just sort of sitting there as the parade goes by. Everybody else is talking about this thing he's not a part of.
Yeah. It's I mean, I remember how, coming where I came from, like telling my friends I'm gonna go to college. And they just they look sad about it. And so I stopped bringing it up. It's like we did not want to talk about the future. We had now and we had to stay in now. We had to stay in the present because talking about the future was scary. It was heavy. Um, you know, because everyone wants to make something of themselves, but a lot are scared like they're going to work at McDonald's forever. If they're lucky, they'll work their way up to manager of a McDonald's. It's scary to watch senior year, like you said, the sorting of the kids who know that they have potential for something, and then the kids who don't, and then they, rather than push themselves, they just accept it. Uh,
Or that nobody else can think of an alternative to college. I mean, the thing I think is, I mean, now to be on this side of it and to be this old, there had been this promise of if you just go to college, the world will open up for you.
not
Behold, it did not happen. It did not happen. And so now what? Like I mean,
yeah.
it is that's sort of amazing to me. And also the way in which whether you feel it or is true or not, there suddenly becomes a value on worth. We've been friends, we've been the same, but now the world is telling us I'm more important than you because I'm not. Some of us are going to in-state college, some of us are going to out of state, some of us are going to the Ivy Leagues, and it just begins to confer this judgment on worth that, sadly, by applying for college, you're almost saying, do you think you're better than us?
Yeah, it's true. I think with, my friends, they didn't think that, I mean, but one of them, my first boyfriend, football player and was a good football player. And one night he got drunk and he told me, he was like, when I blow out my knee and my whole life is ruined because this is the only thing I'm good at, he's like, are you going to take care of me? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, why would you ask me that? That's a lot of pressure. And he's like, well, you're going to make something of yourself. He's like, you have drive. I don't. He's like, all I've ever wanted to do is play football. And do you know like putting everything on sport, on your body. He's like, and it was funny because he was so realistic. This was 10th grade that he said
Mm.
this. I was just like, and but that's the thing is like, especially in Texas, like where football is everything, all these kids' parents, like who are, working truck stops or, they push their kids because they want their kids to be successful. Texas football is like, getting your kid into like a Disney show because, they get on Disney show, they're going to be Sabrina Carpenter in a few years and be selling millions of records.
Well, I mean, but the thing that gets me is, I mean, again, as you get older, it's like we're selling all these kids on a promise and not even telling them about the maybe.
Nope. Yeah.
Like, the economy could do this, the political situation become that.
Yeah.
And, where's your college degree now? Like, what's it going to do for you?
Well,
You're
that
going
was
to wish you had friends.
Yeah, I remember that night because I never went to football games. I went that one night, and the quarterback was running, and he got smashed. And of course, as they got off of him, his leg, like the bone, had popped out of his leg, and there was just blood everywhere. And of course, they had to stop the game. They had to call an ambulance. And I mean, it was horrifying for so many people, but especially horrifying for his teammates who were like, we're going to make something of ourselves. And like, this kid's whole life is ruined. He was betting on football, and his leg is done. Like, he's not
I,
going to walk for at least 6 months to a year.
I want to talk about, like, in terms of just, without giving away the ending, which is both foretold and surprising. Did you always know the shape of this story, or did it reveal itself to you as you were writing it?
So a long time ago, I learned outline, outline, outline. Because if I don't outline about three-quarters and I'm like, what am I doing? I have all these threads. I have no idea how they're going to come together. Um, and so I outline like a madman. And I mean, sometimes outlines will take me 6 months to get right, but they'll be 25 pages, but I have every single beat. Like I know it's going to happen. But there's this beautiful thing that happens when I'm actually writing the script. I go into this weird zone and I can write like an entire script to a graphic novel or to this book in 2 to 3 weeks because I get in the zone. Now that's like 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I get in this flow and then the characters start to do their own thing. The characters start to talk differently than I expected. Some who are like very tight-ended, like My Little Pony or something, like they just start doing their own thing. And I'm always like surprised. And so the ending that I had written in the outline that was approved by my publisher when I wrote the book, the last 30 pages just went com
Okay.
completely off the grid. I was like, this is not in the outline. Like, and
But I
so
love when that happens.
same, same. When I gave it to my publisher, he's like, no, he's like, maybe we shouldn't do this. And I was like, I didn't, the characters wrote themselves. I can't, I'm just a vessel.
I love it. By the way, I mean, when you come to them and say, I want to write this in verse, did they try to talk you out of it? They supportive? How does everybody feel about that?
Norton Young Readers has been so good to me in my career because they let me do my thing. And they do pull me back at times. My publisher, Simon Boughton, who's just like I bow to him. He is so smart. He knows when to let me go and when to pull me back, but he always lets me do my thing, even though he knows it's going to ruffle feathers.
I
Um,
know that, I mean, there've got to be like 250 poems in here. Do you know the count?
no, they're not poems. It's in verse.
Well, I'm sorry. I keep doing that. I keep doing that. I'm like, I'm not afraid of poetry.
Yeah,
Um, but I'm wondering, like, you mentioned how there were some things that got dropped.
yeah.
How much, percentage wise, or how much hits the floor when you're doing something like this?
I mean, every book is different. For this one, it's probably about 10%. Um, but then I will say I dropped about 10% and then I added about 10%. Like my publisher gives great notes. Like he helps me like round out certain characters that, like the mom. Like in my first draft, like the mom was just kind of like in the backdrop. Like, and then, he was like, I want to know more about the mom. And I was like, okay, that's fair. And then it ended up being this great juxtaposition between her and Benny, and then her parallels with Lawson, and then parallels with Lawson's mom. It ended up like working really beautifully. But Yeah, like I think there like in the original draft there were a lot more memories of like Benny reflecting on him and Lawson growing up, but I was able to kind of shave those down and like interject them in other ways. Uh yeah.
And then we can. I have more questions, but also we should open it up to questions from uh, the people who are watching. So if you have some of those, please put them in chat, and let's get to those.
Yeah.
But one of my questions is like you write from the perspective of young people quite often with this urgency to it. Why do you, how do, but first of all, how do you tap into that? And why is that, what's drawing you to that?
Well, one, I'm super childish. I'm very immature. I just bought myself a giant Sentinel the other day. I'm tempted to grab it. It's right over there. It's about this tall. Sentinel is a robot from the X-Men. I always wanted a toy like that. And I was like, you know what? I deserve it. Um, and I think it's because I didn't have a childhood. My childhood was focused on poverty, domestic violence, home instability. Like I was so focused on surviving, I don't feel like I had a childhood. I didn't, my mom never threw me birthday parties. So as an adult, like my friends are like, what do you mean you're throwing your birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese? You're 35. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I never got it. I want it now. Like I've done pool parties. I did a piñata picnic. I did a
I love it.
dinosaur theme party and I dressed up as a dinosaur. Like I am giving myself the childhood I didn't have as an adult. And a lot of the therapy I've done over the years has been getting back in touch with that kid that was so hurt and so injured. And by going and back and addressing those wounds, like I'm healing my own trauma. And so it's actually pretty easy for me to write these books because I'm so in tune with like my 5-year-old self, my 16-year-old self, my 7-year-old self. Um, and I will say that part of the process with these books is thank God for the internet because I can be like, what TV shows were on in the fall of 1997? And I'll look at the list and I'll be like, I watched this, I watched this, I watched this. And then I will put those on in the background. I will watch the movies again. I'll put on the music that I listened to at that time. I get really in the zone of who I was at that time. And it's so funny because when I do that, it's like my dialect like changes. Like I've actually had my partner be like, "You sound more like a hick right now." Like he's like, "You sound like you do when you go home to Texas," which I get very. I reckon to. I fix it. I'm gonna like.
It all comes back.
It all comes back. Um,
We have some
yeah,
questions.
yeah. Let's do it.
Rex, your books draw from deeply personal experiences. What does your writing process look like when you're working with such emotional material?
When I wrote Free Lunch, I was like 33, 34. It was super traumatizing. I would write a chapter and go into a full-on panic attack, and I would not stop until the chapter was done. And then afterwards, I would start hyperventilating. I would, you know, drink a bottle of wine. I would take a Xanax. I would call my therapist crying the next day because I couldn't sleep because I had nightmares. It was awful. Writing Free Lunch was a nightmare. Punching Bag was worse. And then I was telling a friend about it, and he's like, he's a witch. And I was like, you don't fly brooms. Trust me, I've been trying to bend spoons my whole life with my mind, and it doesn't work. And he was like, but he wasn't a witch, like a broom flying witch, but he did like worship the pagan holidays. He was a practicing radical fairy. And he was like, you need to do a spell when you write. And I was like, what do you mean a spell? He's like a ritual. He's like, come up with an entry point and an exit point for your writing. And I was like, give me more. He was like, when you come home, have a certain attire, like a dress robes, which for me was gym clothes, like super comfortable mesh gym shorts, a loose t-shirt, turn off the lights, light a candle. I'd eat like half of a chocolate bar. Uh, Sometimes I would have half a glass of wine. And I would just like tell myself, like, I had some words that I would say and I would read them out loud. And it's very corny, but I was like, I am now going back in time. I am going to become 16 again. And then I'll come back. And then I would write and then I would reverse the ritual afterwards. I would read this spell backwards, being like, I am now 33. I'm coming back to myself. I turn on the lights, I'd blow out the candle, I'd finish the wine, and that helped. I it just my witchy buddy was right. A ritual to kind of go into that heavy space and then to come out of the heavy space. And honestly, it's just like therapy. Um, and so that helped. And by the time, I mean, like I've done it so many times now, like when we ride was much easier. And I will say now that I'm writing fiction, it's so much easier. I'm just like, okay, this is not real. This is not real. Even though most of it's real, it's not
I'm
real.
safe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
This next question is for both of us. It says you explore the intersection of identity, adversity, and resilience. How do you hope your work contributes to conversations about mental health and self-worth?
After you.
You're the star here.
No, no,
You
no,
go
no.
first.
After you.
I'll be brief then. Um, I think a lot of sort of reclaiming your self-worth and your own mental health is realizing that the pressure being put on you is BS. That if you are a bird and they are judging you by the standards of a fish, of course you will never measure up. And the moment you can reject the competition or the pressure around you, the better off you'll be. Um, I mean, I don't chase a lot of things that I'm told I should chase. And I think I'm happier for it. And so I try to write characters who break away from the norm, who by the end of the book have found their own way of judging themselves that is certainly more humane and more realistic than what the world will tell you to do.
I think for me, well, I don't think, I feel like I know now, is that when I was younger, I mean, I've always wanted to write different things at different ages. And like in college, I wanted to be Chuck Palahniuk or Mark Twain, honestly, because I was reading Letters from the Earth at the same time that I was reading Fight Club. And both were commentaries on society. And I was like, these people are so smart. I want to be smart. Um, and I tried writing that, and I submitted it. Actually, the book that I wrote at that time was called Boy Sets Fire, and I submitted to the top 10 MFA programs in the country because I was working at Cheesecake Factory after I graduated. Woo! Not my friends with real jobs were like, "What are you doing? You have a degree," and I'm like, "And this is what I'm doing." But
Ugh.
I used the money to apply to MFA programs and they all rejected me. And I was like, okay, that's not the way. And then I moved to New York to work in publishing so I could learn from the inside. I wrote 14 novels, well, actually 18 novels in a row. They were all rejected. And over time, like, because I think I was trying to write the next Twilight or the next Hunger Games. And I did. Like, I love fantasy, I love sci-fi. But in my mind, I was like, I just need one hit to like make $1 million and then I can write whatever I want. But I always wanted to write fantasy or sci-fi. And then one editor one day told me around novel rejection number 13, he was like, "Where are you in this?" He's like, "You know how to tell a story. You obviously know dialogue and action and plot. You're an editor, like you know all this stuff, but where's your heart? Where's the emotion? Where are you in this?" And I was like, "I don't want to write about me." He's like, "What happened in your childhood that you don't want to write about?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm not going there." But as an exercise, I wrote Free Lunch. And it was rejected by all the publishers again. And I wrote three more novels after that, sci-fi fantasy, all rejected. And then when I turned 40, I was like, I'm moving to LA. I'm going to make this happen. I don't know how I'm. And then through pure luck, I won't go into the long story, but Free Lunch sold to Simon at Norton. And I was like, why are you publishing this? I'm just curious. And he was like, you realize this is social commentary. And I was like, but it's my life. Who fucking cares? And he was like, a lot of people. And he was right. I mean, the thing is like my books don't sell in bookstores, but they sell to school and libraries. And all these teachers and librarians are like, kids need to hear that they're not alone in poverty and domestic violence and home instability. Kids are living with this stuff. And that,
I want to jump in here because I always think this is interesting. I mean, this is a huge deal.
yeah,
I mean, I make it up. I do not, I mean, there's me in there, but not really.
yeah.
When you open the door like that, I mean, it's almost like I wonder, do you ever like can you ever close it? Or, I mean, or do you ever wish people knew less about you? Or like, do you is it a little invasive? Sometimes you're going through your day and somebody wants to talk about your childhood trauma or I mean, you're just trying to get on an airplane or get from A to B.
But it's here's the thing is that talking to all these librarians and teachers, I mean, they start crying, I start crying. I do school visits, and then there's always one kid that lingers afterwards, and then they confess stuff to me, and they're crying, then I'm crying, and then the teachers and librarians in the back are crying, and I'm like, please hug them for me. I'm not there. Um, and it's emotionally very exhausting, but it's also a revelation because I'm like, I didn't know I could write stories like this. And then someone told me about Jason Reynolds, and then I read everything he wrote, and I was like, oh my God, like he is writing for the kids who need books like this. Now, I still want to write fantasy and horror and all that stuff, and I am. But at least once or twice a year, I'm writing a book that I think is important because I think now that that door's open, I can't close it. I want to write more books like this. I want to write real books.
One of the questions is again for both of us, but I'll start with you this time.
Yeah.
What brings you joy?
Honestly, whatever that little kid wants inside me, I swear, like on a daily basis, like I check in with the 5-year-old or the 7-year-old or the 8-year-old or the 15-year-old or the any age that I'm in, like I'll check in on them and I'll be like, what do you want for lunch? Or, what do you want to watch on TV tonight? Or what tattoos should we get? I have a lot of tattoos that I didn't pick, but makes the younger me so happy every time I look at it. And when he's happy, I'm happy. So in a way, I'm taking care of myself, and that brings me joy. Um, Maybe that's a weird answer, but
No,
I do feel like if you take care of yourself, you will find joy.
I like, and I feel this certainly about my writing. I feel this about most of the key relationships in my life. There are a lot of things I could write, but so could a lot of other people. You don't need me for that.
Yeah.
Um, I feel joy when I feel like I'm doing the maybe six or seven things I think I was put on this earth to do. No one else could do them. It
Yeah.
had to be me, right? I had to be Papa. No one else was marrying my husband. No one else is qualified. Like, I mean, good luck replacing me, right? Like,
Yeah.
never gonna happen. Um, and that whenever I'm in the flow of those things, I mean, some of them are friendships, some of them are familial relationships, but anytime I'm doing something where I was like, only I could do this, which is why I'm horrible at like what we'll call the mundane tasks of the world or the imposed, like filing my taxes. I hate filing my taxes. We all have to file taxes. I
It is.
wasn't put on the earth to file taxes, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
So what gives me joy is those moments where I feel like literally, I'm like, yeah, this is what I was born for.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel about writing. I've wanted to do it since I was 5, and now that I'm doing it, writing like 5 books a year, and everyone's like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, "Because this is what I've always wanted to do."
Well, you also, what I think other writers, myself included, might envy is when you said 10 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I can't get 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do
Then
you know
you
what I
just
mean?
have to keep practicing.
Huh?
It's like
No,
marathon running. You keep doing it. You train yourself. You do a little
no.
more.
It's not about my personal, my life doesn't allow it. I've got to drop these kids off.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fair.
there's not the space for me to have 5 hours. I mean, like one of the things I'm proud of is that I've done anything while still being a full primary parent in these
Yes.
kids' lives. Because
Yeah.
this isn't the old days where it's like the door is closed, don't bother Papa.
Right.
I mean, they just come in.
They're like, I need attention.
Well, and it also, I mean, and again, I wonder about this in terms of like where reflection places in your work, because like I found the fact that I've been slowed down, so to speak,
Yeah.
gives me more time to think about things sort of in the subconscious of my mind that
Yeah.
I'm ultimately grateful for. I mean, you are moving at a really like you're very disciplined. Um, do you find yourself like is it possible to be writing something and then be 3 months removed and go, wait a minute, I gotta go back and get in there?
No.
No.
Here's the thing, nothing will ever be perfect. Like even this, the very first page, why did I use the color red? Or why did I use the word red? Crimson would have been so much better. Scarlet would have been better. Red was the wrong word. Red is basic. And when you had me read that other passage, I used the word red again. No, that's awful. So lazy. I don't know how
So
to.
wait, you are still you're very hard on yourself.
Oh yeah, 100%. But I fully believe that you just get her done. Do it, move to the next because nothing in this life is perfect. People strive for perfection. I'm like, why? You're never going to get there. Never.
Ooh. I don't think I hit perfect, but I certainly feel like it was the best that I could do at that time.
And that's it. That's your best. I think best is so much better to strive for than perfection.
Yeah. But here's the thing, but I wouldn't go back and look at it and say I used the wrong word there.
Oh, I do it all the time. Like if I have to reread something from one of my books, I'm always like, why would I write that? That doesn't make any sense. No, you should have written it like this. I will always be, there's always a better way. There's always a way to perfect something or perfect something. And I use quotes because it's like, no such thing.
When you are done with the book, I mean, some people are exhilarated, some people I go into a slight postpartum depression.
Well, I used to have that, but now that I'm working on 3 or 4 books at a time, I don't have it. I'm like, you don't have time. You've got other kids in the room. You better step it up. Be sad about that one later.
Um, I think that one more here's how do you balance being so honest about trauma and sensitive topics while still offering a sense of hope, especially in young people?
I don't know. I think I feel like something happened writing all my childhood into 4 books. And I just feel like I shelved my pain. Because this is not ever what I expected to do. I mean, I always knew I wanted to be a writer, but I never thought I would talk about my childhood. And now I'm talking about it so much that I'm just like, I'm just gonna say what I needed to hear as a kid. Everything I do, like I'm writing books for the younger versions of me. I check in with them. I'm like, what do you think I should write this month? I'm always coming up with ideas because they're like, oh, you should do this. Remember? And I'll remember ideas I had in high school for books, and I'm like, that's a great idea. I'll write that down. Um, and so yeah, I don't know. I will say my mom had a lot of faults. She had many, but she did some great things. And one of the things that she instilled in me at a very young age was always be honest, never lie. She's like, nothing good can ever come from lying. To the point where like people would come over, she'd be like, why are you wearing that? That's an awful dress. That's hideous. I'm like, Mom, filter. And she'd be like, I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
And I think I've adopted that. I don't tell people they don't look nice, but I just will keep my mouth shut. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But yeah, otherwise, I just honesty is the easiest way to go.
I know you have 10 books in the hopper,
Yeah,
clearly.
more.
I mean, what in terms of just, and this is the most American question, like, what's next? I mean, we should of course buy When We Ride, but like, what's the next thing that's due out from you? Do you know?
Well, now that some of them are under contract, I can't talk about them, which is super annoying. Um,
But there's nothing that's got a publication date that's been announced.
yes. So I have the pen name Ray Terciero. Dan in Green Gables comes out in June. Count of Monte Cristo High comes out next year. I've got a middle grade graphic novel called Bubblegum Coven, which is something that I like when I write really hard stuff, I parse it out with something that's super fluffy and cotton candy. And that's what Bubblegum Coven is. It's basically Powerpuff Girls with witches. It's very
Mhm.
cool. And it's for middle school. Like it's super fluffy and fun. And so yeah, I try to balance stuff out. Yeah, I feel like I have a lot coming out, but I can't talk about it. Oh,
Is there
fruitcake.
anything?
Fruitcake comes out next year, which is it, they're memoirs. So for Scholastic, I did Four Eyes, Pizza Face, and Fruitcake. So I'm taking back all the names that I was called. Um, and they're like middle grade graphic novels. They're like a Disney version of my life, but they still hit on the hard stuff. Like if you read it, you can see the heavy stuff in the background.
Omar's back.
What up, Omar? He's like, y'all stop talking.
No, no, no. I didn't mean to stop the conversation
Yeah.
by coming back in. I just wanted to say that those names are also reflect me as well.
I think they reflect a lot of us.
Yes, yes. And I love Bubblegum Coven. I love the idea of
It's
that.
very X-Men.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Rex, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for
Yeah.
having us.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Thank you very
Rashid, thank you
much
for
to both of
moderating.
you.
Rashid, you did an awesome job.
Thank you. I love doing this. This is always fun.
Yeah.
And I'm having an off night, so I'm like, oh, Rashid has got it
Yeah.
under control. I don't even have
Done
to worry about it.
it.
And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Please make sure you pick up when we ride. It's not coming in. It's
Yeah, I'll
sort of
do
disappearing. There you go.
it. It's got a gun on the cover. Kids will read it.
Yeah. Yes, you can buy it through our museum store, support the museum, or wherever is easiest for you as well. Thanks again. Please join us again for another author event. We'll have a few more coming up. And we'll see you soon. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks so
All right.
much. Y'all take
Thank
care.
you.